Lesson 4.5 is all about solving quadratic equations by being able to find square roots. So let's just flash back to simplifying square roots here. All right, so what would the solutions be to the following equations? Well, if you have an x squared by itself and you want to solve for x, you have to take the square root. Okay, now whatever I do on one side, I have to do to the other. So x would be equal to, okay, now we think about the square root of 9 being 3. And what we're going to be talking about today, we also have to consider that that 3 could be positive or it could be negative. Thinking about if I take negative 3 and square it, I get 9. Same thing applies if I take positive 3 and square it, I also get 9. So we just want to take into account that we could have two possible answers there. I'll think about it over here. Square root of x squared, take the square root of 25. So x is by itself now, and we know that the square root of 25 is 5, but once again, that could be plus or minus 5. Okay. And now looking over here, take the square root of x squared. Okay. Going through and simplifying, I get that x is equal to the real solution. Okay. You cannot take the square root of a negative number and get a real number. All right, let's take a look here. We want to solve these equations by using square roots. These cannot be things that are factored. So we're just going to go through and try to get x by itself. This just like we would any other equation, we want to go through and get our variable by itself. So my first step is going to be to subtract 1 from both sides. So I get 2x squared is equal to 32. I'll divide by 2 on both sides. And I get x squared is equal to 16. And then my last step is going to be to take the square root of x squared so that I can get the variable fully by itself. So when we say we want the variable by itself, it means that we want no number next to the variable, and we also don't want any exponents. So simply we just want x. Okay, and I take the square root of x. And once again, we talked about this before. When we take the square root here, all right, if I take a negative 4 and square it, I get 16. If I take a positive 4 and square it, I still get 16. So our answers are going to be both a positive and a negative 4. Through what those steps are, okay, the things that we just did. All right, we want to first isolate the variable, okay, so we want to isolate that x squared. Now, once we have that, okay, you can see that we did that within my first two steps. Once that's done, you're going to take the square root of both sides. That's how we're able to get x fully by itself. This is a key one here. You want to remember to use plus or minus. Okay, so thinking about, we have two possible solutions there when we take the square root. And we didn't have to for this particular question, but sometimes when we go through and we want to take the square root, we're not going to get a number that has a perfect square. So we're going to see if we are able to simplify the radical down any more than it shows. All right, so let's take those steps, keep them in mind for question number 2. All right, so I can see here, here's my x squared variable. I'm going to do everything I can to get that isolated first. So my first step I see is going to be to add 16 to both sides here. So now I have 3x squared is equal to 24. We're going to continue to isolate that x squared, so I'll divide both sides by 3. And at this point now I get that x squared is equal to 8. So we've isolated my variable. Okay. Now I'm going to go through, I'm going to take the square root of both sides. Okay, I can check that off my list. X is equal to, we have to remember to use my plus or minus sign. Okay, we have the square root of 8. Now, the square root of 8 is not a whole number. However, I can take a look at what my perfect square values are and see if I can simplify what I have underneath my square root down any more than it shows. So if I think about my list of perfect squares, I have 4, 9, 16, 25, and so on. When I take a look at these options, I want to see, is the number underneath my square root able to be divided by any of these perfect squares? And the one that jumps out at me right away is 4. So I'm going to do my simplifying over here. Okay. So when I take the square root of 8, essentially what I am doing is I'm taking 4 times 2. All right. So all I'm doing is replacing the 8 with my perfect square factor that it has and what it's multiplied by. Anytime that you are multiplying numbers underneath the square root, we can actually break them up into 2 separate radicals. Okay, these 2 steps show me that I have the same thing. But what I can do now is see that this first radical here, this first square root, I can actually take that and get a whole number. The square root of 4 we know is 2. Now the square root of 2 though I can't break down, so that'll just stay. Now if I go through, put this back into the solution for my problem, x would be equal to a plus or minus 2 times the square root of 2. And after I've done that, I've simplified my radical, and I'm good. Let's try number 3. Now number 3, you're going to see I don't just have the x squared by itself. I actually have an expression that's going to be squared. So I want to treat this the same way. All right, I'm still going to go through my steps. I want to isolate what I have. I am going to take the square root of both sides. I'll still remember to use my plus or minus, and then I'm going to simplify everything down that I can. So I'm going to keep those steps in mind when I look at my next 2 questions. So for me, to get what's being squared isolated, I need to get rid of the 3 out front. So what I'm going to do, since it's multiplying, I will divide both sides by 3. So I have my quantity of x minus 2 being squared. That's by itself. Okay, so I can cross those 3's out now. And 21 divided by 3 gives me 7. All right. Well, now when I look here, okay, I'm still seeing that I do have to take the square root, so that's what I'm going to do. Take the square root of both sides. All right. Once I do that, I don't just have x by itself. I have that expression of x minus 2 being by itself. Now, the number 7 is prime, so if I try to think about any numbers that are perfect squares that I can divide 7 by, there's not going to be anything that works. So we'll just keep this as a plus or minus square root of 7. Okay, that's as far down as I can break it. And then my last step here, to get x by itself, I have to get rid of that minus 2. So like any simple equation that we've done before, I will just add 2 to both sides. So then x is going to be equal to, and I'm going to put the 2 out front. You can put it at the end. I'll just put it at the front. 2 plus or minus the square root of 7. And that's an exact answer. And when I say exact, it means that there's no decimals. The square root of 7 cannot be simplified nicely. You will have to round at some point if you do take the square root of 7. So to keep it exact, we will leave it just as it's shown with the 7 underneath the square root. So less work for you, and it keeps our answer exact. No rounding issues. We'll do my last one here together, number 4. Same ideas. All right, so my first step being I want to isolate whatever is squared. So I'm going to do what I can to get that quantity of x minus 4 squared by itself. So first thing I'll do, start to work from the outside in. So I'll see that I will have to add 55 to both sides. So that leaves me with 3 times the quantity of x minus 4 squared. The 55s will cancel. 245 plus 55 gives me 300. Okay, I'm getting closer to getting my expression isolated. I will divide both sides now by 3. The 3's on the left will cancel. I have the quantity of x minus 4 squared. That's going to be equal to 100. So now that I have this is isolated, my next step is going to be to take the square root of both sides. So I will do that. So I can try to get x finally by itself. Doing so on the left-hand side, okay, the radical and the square disappear. So now I'm just left with x minus 4 equals. And now 100 is actually a perfect square. Okay, the square root of 100 is equal to 10. But keeping in mind, okay, if I take negative 10 squared, I get 100. If I take a positive 10 and square it, I get 100. So that's why we want to take into account that this could be a plus or a minus 10. And then my last step, to get x by itself, I'll take care of that minus 4 by adding 4 to both sides. So then finally I get x is equal to 4 plus or minus 10. Now, since that's not anything that is in a square root, I can actually simplify that down. All right, so we have x is equal to 4 plus 10, or x is equal to 4 minus 10. So let's just do some quick addition here. X is equal to 14 would be one answer. 4, okay, x is equal to negative 6. And that would be my final simplifying.